Alright, so today we are going to be talking about our Dendro Archon Nahida, since she is going to be getting a rerun for the 3.6 patch. So we're going to be talking about Nahida and all the stuff that she does. Now today's video is going to be a little bit more different than my usual guide slash kit videos, stuff like that, because usually in those videos I give a list of pros and cons for each character, you know, giving you a reason to summon if you want to, or giving you a reason not to summon if you don't want to. Is usually somewhere in the middle with a good amount of detail and points into either or direction. For Nahida, we are just going to be saying why she's almost a must-have unit in every account, just because of the sheer amount of stuff that you can do with her kit, the sheer amount of use that she has in her kit, how strong she is, and basically her infinite amount of potential with the future and other characters that could come out. She's just overall an amazing unit, and we're going to be talking about that in this video. So before we get into all that, make sure to leave a sub and a like on the video if you're enjoying the Genshin content. I got a lot of stuff out of the way, so now I can start making videos again. But we are going to be covering Nilou very soon, which is a character I really love, and Baiju and Kaveh, of course, as they're getting closer. And we're also going to be talking about more things and have a lot of stuff planned for the future. So other than that, let's go ahead and get right back to the video talking about Nahida and why she is a must summon unit. So Nahida overall, of course, sporting the name of the Dendro Archon does not disappoint. Now, for the most part, we're going to be talking about her talents, and then we're going to be talking about her constellations, of course, and her kit, all that type of stuff, because a lot of people are either going to be getting her for the first time, or they're going to be getting constellations for Nahida with their upcoming rerun. Now, me personally, I am going to go for C2, so hopefully I get really lucky and get it real early, but let's go ahead and talk about the talents. So, for Nahida, for the most part, her normal attack, which is her first talent, isn't going to be leveled up as much. You can if you want to. Nahida can be used as a main DPS or a driver for Dendro, so that you can use sub DPS type units or supports to allow you to, you know, get those reactions with Dendro using like Raiden, Xingqiu, Yelan, all the type of stuff on all those different characters. You are able to do that with Nahida if you so choose to, but the only problem is, since Nahida is very reliant on EM, as a lot of the Dendro characters are, her normal attacks are scaled off of attack, so you aren't going to be getting the most amount of damage from this, just because a lot of your EM is going to be put onto Nahida, and Nahida is not going to really focus on attack. You may get some on your subsets and stuff like that, but it isn't going to really impact a lot for your normal attack. But let's go ahead and get to the meat of her kit, which is All Schemes to Know. Now, All Schemes to Know is basically the point in Nahida where she is absolutely busted. She is so strong for this very reason. And let's not forget the fact that we got to mention that since Nahida is Dendro, she is basically infinitely able to be the source of one of the strongest elements in the game. Sporting the likes of Hydro and Pyro, we have a lot of different elements that are able to be the kings of Genshin just because of the reactions that they're able to use on their own. Dendro, for all we know, has some of the strongest reactions in the game, no doubt, with Hyper Bloom being one of the strongest teams in the game, Bountiful Cores being one of the most insane teams as well with Nilou. There's just so much that you can do with Dendro. You have Burning, which is able to help a lot with Pyro application, all that type of stuff. You have Aggravate. There's just so much you can do with Dendro, and the fact that Nahida is able to do so many crazy things with her E, with, you know, reacting with Dendro, is just absolutely busted. So let's go ahead and start talking about it and how it works. So for the most part, this has a press and hold version of it. The press version of this skill is just going to be a little twirl for Nahida, and she's going to inflict the enemies around her with this seed. If you hold it down, you're going to be able to go into your camera mode basically, and you're going to be able to scan the enemies and inflict the seed onto them. Now, for the cool thing about the hold portion of this is you have pretty much infinite resist interruption, and this is the craziest thing in the world, because you can see many things try to push Nahida out of it, and they hit her like crazy in her hold version of the skill, and they just won't budge. They will not move. Nahida is just going to be like, okay, and as long as you can survive it and you have enough HP to survive it, you are going to be able to stay in that form for as long as it lets you, and you're not going to be flung out when you're doing it. So you don't have to worry about getting thrown out of your skill and not being able to mark the enemies. You're going to always be able to do so. But the good thing about this skill and how crazy it is, even though it has a max of 8 enemies, which for the most part that should be enough for, you know, your normal abyss floors, your overall usage and all that type of stuff. When this seed is onto characters, they are linked. Now with this link, whenever there is a Dendro reaction or an elemental reaction, or Dendro core seeds explode onto them, every single one of those enemies are going to be hit with Dendro damage based on Nahida's attack and elemental mastery. Now this is where elemental mastery is going to be very important for Nahida, because it's going to be helping helping her with her Tricomma purification damage. So this is going to be the reaction you get once those linked enemies, any one of them, take damage from or get elemental reaction based off of them on Dendro. So that's why characters like Nilou, that's why characters like Kuki, all of them have very good synergy with Nahida. Having lightning, having what is it called, hydro, make a really good combo with Nahida because you're able to make those cores, you're able to inflict that reaction damage with Nahida's E. It's just overall an insane amount of damage that Nahida puts out just for having them linked, and that's not even all of it. Besides Nahida's damage that she's able to do with all schemes to know, she's able to absolutely give infinite Dendro application to all of these enemies. For the most part, when you pop Nahida's E on a character, they're going to be having the C duration of 25 seconds. Now the cooldown for this skill is 6 seconds or 5 seconds. So basically you have infinite uptime on your cooldown. You can refresh it whenever. It has a very long duration that it stays on the enemy, so you don't have to worry about it expiring mid-rotation. It's just going to be a constant source of Dendro and application of Dendro for as long as you possibly need it. And then when you need to repop it or you're done with your rotation, Nahida already has her cooldown for her skill a lot earlier done than usually other characters would. So this is the so strong part about Nahida and why she's absolutely amazing, especially with how strong Dendro is with Hyper Bloom, with Dendro core making, with burning, with aggravate, all these different types of reactions that Dendro has access to. Having infinite application to these, having extra damage put onto other enemies that are linked with those enemies, it's just overall an insane amount of utility that is with her skill by itself. Now another thing that makes Nahida so very strong is her ult, which is very good. Now her ult is going to be basically buffing her skill, so that's why I'm saying the skill is a really strong part about Nahida. But for the most part, the ult is going to be helping out the skill in a different amount of ways based on your team. So if you have Pyro with your ult, or you have Pyro characters based on your ult, you're going to be getting different buffs depending on how many of those characters you have on your team. If you have Pyro, you're going to end up getting a damage boost to your seat or your Tricomma purification, depending if you have 1 or 2 Pyro units. If you use Electro or have 1 or 2, you're going to get a higher interval, or I guess you could say a smaller interval between the damages that are going to come from those Tricomma purification damage. So that's going to be really good. And then Hydro extends the ult and how long it lasts. So this is really cool to have, especially on Nahida. But the strong or the really crazy part about it isn't even in the description yet. It's going to be in the passives. We're going to be talking about that in a quick second. But also a quick thing to note, Nahida sports a 50 energy cost ult, so you will basically always be able to get it, especially with having Nahida's mark onto different enemies. When they die, they're going to be able to give those particles to Nahida, and Nahida will basically be able to get the energy cost with 50, be able to recharge it almost to max, and by the time you get to the point where you need to use her ult again, with it lasting for so long, is going to be up ready 100% of uptime if you really wanted to. And it is a big range, like I mean it basically covers the whole arena of the Spiral Abyss, and that's nothing more than you could ask for. But now talking about her passives, this is the part that's going to be buffing more of her skill and her burst type thing. So we are going to be seeing why she is so strong even more with her passives and how it affects her skill and her burst. So for her first talent, she is going to be getting a buff to her burst. Basically, whoever has the highest elemental mastery on the team is going to be giving 25% of it to the active character that's on the field. So you are able to give 250 elemental mastery. For the most part, Nahida should be the one sharing this because you are going to be building her most of the time EM base, unless you have C6 or you have C4 if I'm not wrong. So you're going to end up having Nahida with a lot of elemental mastery. 1000 is the preferred amount that you want to have if you're a little bit lucky with your artifacts and you're using EM Catalyst. Is going to be very easy to attain, but for the most part you should be able to attain that 250 max elemental mastery boost to the active character. And this helps a lot with reaction teams. Like this could help with Hu Tao if you really want to, but for the most part a lot of the Dendro characters in this game do gain a good amount of damage boost from elemental mastery, like I'll hate them, like Tainari, and maybe other units that come out in the future. But Dendro really likes that elemental mastery, and being able to have an extra 250 is a big boost to a lot of the reactions that can happen when you're using Dendro, and also to give a damage boost to a lot of the Dendro main DPSs like Tainari, like I'll hate them. So it is an amazing passive to have, and it is a big boost to those teams, especially because Dendro teams are so reaction based, and the damage boost they give to those characters are absolutely insane. Now, another thing that is really cool with building Elemental Mastery on Nahida is her second passive is going to give her crit rate and crit damage. If I'm not wrong, once you reach 1000 Elemental Mastery, you should be able to get a maximum of 80% crit damage and 24% crit rate added on to whatever else you have. So if you have a good amount of crit rate, crit damage on your EM artifacts, then it's basically going to be amazing. You're going to be getting a lot of crit damage, and you're also going to be getting a good amount of crit rate to help you with your ratios. So it's really nice. And then the last thing for her passive is during her skill, she is able to get harvestable items within a small range or a medium range, which helps a little bit in some cases, but it's not really used a lot. And you can also mind read characters in Sumeru. So for the most part, this is really cool. She's absolutely amazing. She has a very strong kit just from her passives and her talents alone. But let's go ahead and talk about her weapons, her artifacts, and then going on to her constellations for all of us who are going to be getting her on our rerun for constellations. For her weapons, you are going to want to be using Elemental Mastery type Catalyst. For the most part, you are going to want to run her signature Catalyst if you do have it, because it's not only going to give Elemental Mastery to Nahida, but it's also going to be giving a good amount of it to your team as well. So this is really good, and it also gives an elemental damage type bonus as well if you have this Catalyst on. There are other options that you could possibly use for this. When it comes to Nahida and Elemental Mastery, you can use the Wandering Evan Star, which helps a lot. This also gives Elemental Mastery as a bonus, so that's really good to have. There's other different options that you can use, but for the most part, you do want to use the Wandering Evan Star. The the Widsith could work as well, because it could give Elemental Mastery from its passive, so that works as well, because I know a lot of people have the Widsith. And you know, if you want to, Emerald Orb, just a good amount of options to use when it comes to having Elemental Mastery. But for the most part, her signature weapon is going to be great. But the Widsith, the Wandering Evan Star, which is probably one of the best forest touches you could possibly use, these are going to be your best options when it comes to using Nahida and her weapon. Now, talking about her artifacts, there are two different ways you can go about this. For the most part, during her, I guess you could say, support build, or for a general use build, you are going to want to use Deepwood Memories, because it's not only going to give Dendro damage bonus, but it's going to help out her Tri-Karma Purification damage. And with the 4-piece bonus, after elemental skills or bursts hit opponents, the target's Dendro res will be decreased by 30%. So this is basically all the time, because when her Tri-Karma Purification damage happens, it's going to be reprocking the Deepwood Memory set. It's going to be allowing the Dendro res to be decreased almost infinitely when it comes to using her skill. This is just the overall great set to have on her. Now, you can use the Gilded Dream set as well, because this does give Elemental Mastery and attack, so it helps her damage personally. But you kind of want to only run this if you have C6 or C4 Nahida, most of the time C6, because you don't really need all of that attack for Nahida. And for the most part, you want to have this Dendro res shred as much as you possibly can, and Nahida is just absolutely amazing to have it for. There's not really any other builds that really make sense for Nahida when it comes to how great it is on them, because you do want a lot of Elemental Mastery, and Deepwood Memories by itself, giving Dendro damage bonus and giving Dendro res shred, is a very strong option to have on her, especially with it proccing almost infinitely due to her basically zero cooldown on her skill. Now, talking about, of course, the most important part, which a lot of people are looking forward to, which are the constellations. She has some absolutely insane constellations, which make her super strong already than she is at C0. Now, for the C1, basically, you're going to be adding +1 to any character that you have on the team. You know, when I talked about having the Pyro, Hydro, and Electro characters on your team, basically, if you have one Electro character, it counts as 2 now. If you have one Pyro, it counts as 2. And if you have maybe 2 Hydro, it counts as 3. So you're going to be getting more levels to your burst when it comes to what characters are on your team if you have Constellation 1. For C2, which is the one I'm going for, she's going to allow, this is the absolutely crazy part, she's going to allow Dendro reactions to be able to crit, and this is going to be doing some insane damage, especially with nilou teams, because I'm really excited to do that. But she's going to be allowing them to crit. Now, this crit damage and crit rate that are on this reaction constellation does not stack on top of what you have currently. So say you have 50% crit rate with 100 crit damage, it's not going to add on the 20 and the 100. This is going to be its own separate thing, and the reaction damage is going to scale off of this, not the crit damage and crit that you have on your character. But the really important thing is that within 8 seconds of this being happening, or whenever you do Dendro reactions that are quicken, aggravate, or spread, which is very easy to proc, defense is decreased by 30%. So not only do you have, what's it called, critable reactions, you have defense shredding as well. So yeah, that is absolutely insane for Nahida. All schemes to know her skill is the 3rd constellation. That's really nice. For C4, basically whenever you mark opponents, you're going to be getting a certain amount of elemental mastery because of it. So if you get 1, you get 100. If you get 2 marked, is 120, and then 3 is 140, and then 4 is 160. This is going to help a lot when it comes to her C6, which is very busted. C5 is going to be her burst, gets a +3 bonus. Now talking about Constellation 6, this is where she becomes very strong, very busted. Basically when Nahida does her skill and she pops her ult, whenever you use normal or charge attacks on Nahida, she's going to be proccing this new, I guess you could say, version of damage called Karmic Oblivion, which is basically her nuking like crazy amounts of Dendro damage onto the enemy. And this is absolutely insane to watch. If you see any C6, I guess you could say, showcases of Nahida, you can see how absolutely absurd Nahida is when it comes to her and her constellations. But other than that, that's pretty much it for Nahida. There's not really a lot of downsides or a lot of crazy downsides to talk about when it comes to Nahida, because she has such a strong kit and she basically fills in all of the roles, or not all of the roles, but all the different types of utility and kit that you possibly need in a Dendro character in one character. Not only does she have infinite application because of her skill having no cooldown, basically she's able to make a lot of enemies take the same amount of damage when it comes to reactions after a certain period of time. And then not only that, she's also able to boost elemental mastery, which helps a lot of these Dendro teams. She's able to allow so many different reactions to happen and have so many different teams not have to worry about constant Dendro application from other units where they have to keep bringing them back out. Nahida just does a really quick swipe on the field and is pretty much good for the rest of your rotation. Nahida just does so much for the team. She is very good. She does a lot of damage. She can be the main DPS, a sub DPS, a support unit. She is just absolutely insane. So for the most part, Nahida is a very good pick to pick up. If you are going to be getting Nahida, I'm wishing all the luck to you and all the luck to myself as well, because I cannot wait to summon on her C2 hopefully and see some crazy stuff happen. But yeah, Nahida is a very useful unit, and I can see her being very good in the future with whatever future characters come out, just because Dendro is so good with so many different elements. So Nahida will basically exponentially gain value as more characters come out. So other than that, thank you guys so much for watching all at the end. Make sure to leave a like and a sub. We are going to be covering Nilou, Kave, and Baiju when they come out. So we're going to be talking about all that in the future. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. See you on the next one, and peace.